Hello and welcome to the Jungle, a Cincinnati Bengals podcast brought to you by the Riverfront and the folks over at Blue Wire. My name is Owen and Caroline. Again, joined by Caroline Palmer. Caroline, new setup. You're at home.
I know, back in
Yes.
North Carolina, a little bit of a different setup for me this week, but
Yes.
happy to be home. Not happy that I have to unpack my entire room, which is like a war zone right now with everything
I
that I
bet.
brought home.
I this is my last show in this room in college. Moving out. Graduation commencement tomorrow and Sunday.
Yeah.
Getting real, but I've not thought at all about packing. So it's
You shouldn't.
That'll be
More
that'll be a
important
s-
things.
that'll be a Monday morning problem when
Yeah.
when I have to get out of my house.
Future
But
Owen's problem.
yeah,
Not
I'm not really
now.
worried. Right now, I'm worried about some stuff that Bengals star defensive end Trey Hendrickson said last week. We'll start here with this. A lot of stuff to get into. Trey Hendrickson, we'll harp on him a lot, but a lot of it's going to be the same stuff. Then we'll
Yeah.
move into some Shamar Stewart talk, which is kind of connected to Trey Hendrickson's things. But I think we're going to spend the bulk of this episode on breaking down the schedule because I think that's a very important piece to how all this works as well. So I think a very related episode
Absolutely.
today.
Yeah.
I don't know. It all works out. So we'll start with Trey Henderson. And we were just talking about this. He came to practice last week to the not mandatory, the optional, the OTAs, Bengals just doing team practices, stuff like that. Everyone's there. We said Jermaine Pratt's not there, but that's understood. Trey Anderson has every right not to be there. And instead, he showed up looking like he was just coming off of the golf range. Looked like he had just played 18 over at Cincinnati Country Club, but instead he is at the practice field. And instead of working out with the team, he had a whole media frenzy, Caroline.
Yes. I saw one video. I think he was with Jamar Chase just
Yeah.
walking into the facility, but he definitely took the high road here. I mean, it's
Yeah.
almost like a methodical, like, I don't wanna say middle finger, but, like, kind of
I mean,
in
it
its own
is.
way is kind of
Yeah.
what it is. We'll go into more depth, but there's now, at least in Hendrickson's eyes, it's now become a little bit more of a personal attack than it is a business attack, and we can explain why Hendrickson feels that it's turned that way, but there's definitely a new layer to this, and we were talking off camera about how, like, it just keeps going, but I feel like for the first time in probably a couple months, there is a true new layer to this saga that, at least from an outside perspective, we didn't know about.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff we had before was a lot of just speculation. He'd been on McAfee, he'd voiced his concerns. A lot of it was his lack of um Henderson talked a lot about broken promises in the beginning half of his offseason, saying that he thought this was going to happen. There's been some back and forth, and the Bengals are getting lowballed. Now, there's been two conflicting reports that have come out over the last, I'd say, week and a half. One was from Ian Rappaport saying, oh, and actually, it was Diana Rossini. We talked about this last week, where that there was ongoing conversations. Then a report came out a couple days ago that there had been no communication since the draft. Now Hendrickson is here at Bengals OTAs, and he had some stuff to say, which we kind of both agreed was fair. I think he says that he's not going to willing to play under this new contract. He wants to get some sort of restructuring done, and that's in his words, it's the uncomfortable part of the business side, because in other stuff I've read about Hendrickson is that he's very vocal about how he wants to be in Cincinnati. He wants to raise his family here. He wants to start his life here. He said that this is the first organization in his time as an NFL, granted it's only been two, that he fully feels like he's like a part of a family. He feels like he wants to live his life in this area. And first off, that's what you want to hear as a fan from
Mhm.
your star defensive player. But at the same time, like Henderson can say all that stuff, but if he's not getting paid enough money and he feels like he's not being respected correctly by his job, he has every right to be complaining.
I agree. I think it's a vastly different situation. We've seen the most glaring comparison just in terms of statistics, like position and whatever, is the Myles Garrett situation that also happened in division. You heard him completely mouth off to the media how he's never going to win a championship in Cleveland, wants this big time money, wants to
Totally.
go to a competitor, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, the report comes out 2 days later that he signed this giga contract with Cleveland for a bunch of money. And everybody kind of is sitting back going, you didn't want to be there.
Mm-mm.
Like, now you've just signed for money. This is almost the other side where Trey Henderson vocalizes that he wants to be in Cincinnati. Obviously, Cincinnati, I feel like, is in a good position in terms of who they have. But he's saying, I don't care what the team looks like. I want to play in Cincinnati. I want to be a Bengal. blah, blah, blah. But on the other side, the money side isn't cutting it.
Yeah.
And an interesting thing that I found that was actually not even for this year, it's for 2026. The Bengals are expected to take a large cap hit after like this season in
Hmm.
2025. And I saw a statistic where they would have to most likely restructure the contracts of Burrow, Higgins, and Chase so they could avoid a
What?
$50 million cap hit next year.
Jeez, oh Pete.
And so you're already dealing with that. And on top of that, you have Hendrickson, who most likely you would have to construct his, but he's willing to do that now. And this is
Hmm.
something that I saw this name and I remember saying it when we talked about free agency. A name that popped up and money that they could have used for Trey Hendrickson is the extension of Mike Gesicki. I
Yeah.
said that that was too much money and that money could have been used elsewhere. And look at where we are. It's being brought up as a contract extension that, in the hindsight of things, makes no sense when you have Hendrickson, who just needs a little bit more than what you're giving him. And instead of being able to give it to him, you have it riding with Gesicki, which I personally did not agree with, but
Yeah. I see what you're saying. I think it's an interesting point. I think uh we had so much momentum with this contract stuff because like we talked about this in January when Joe Burrow went on his Super Bowl media tour in New Orleans, and he was like, Trey was always a name that came up. So we've checked all the boxes on Joe Burrow's demands. Underrated part of this whole saga is too, and I don't really know how much of a connection this is, but Joe Burrow was supposed to have his first press conference of the year last week, and that got pushed back to this Monday. So, and it
mhm,
was kind of like out of nowhere. So, I mean, do I think Joe Burrow was unhappy? Not at all. He honestly has no reason to be unhappy. So, but yeah, I think that's a interesting point. The Gesicki thing. I just really like Gesicki, so it's like I understand it. Yeah, but the money is there to pay Trey Hendrickson, and it's because the cap. The money is not the problem in this. I feel like
mhm,
it's just unwillingness, and the Bengals. And we just talked about this. Trey Hendrickson says he wants to be here, and I think the Bengals think they can leverage that as a low ball, and that's clearly what they've done, and that they're not going to um, budge on that. And I think it's fair to
mhm.
Hendrickson that because so many of these guys, Andrew Whitworth is a great example, took these discounts because they liked playing in Cincinnati. I don't know if discount's the right word, but the Bengals were able to leverage on,
They would
hey, like you're fit.
they've reconstructed contracts.
Yeah. To with the idea in mind that you want to be here. And
Mhm,
so the players are like, yeah, I do. So like I'll do whatever I want. And then by the second or third time this happens, these guys get tired of it. So it's sticky. I don't really like talking about it because it's just kind of boring at this point. I'm
yeah,
happy we got some more stuff from Hendrickson. I thought it was very direct. We didn't talk about this yet. Zach Taylor texted him saying it'd be fine for missing mandatory camp. It's also fair.
yeah,
Zach Taylor, his one criticism from a lot of people has been that he's not been he's very much a player's coach, but his one thing is that he doesn't, I don't know, he's not very vocal about this kind of things. And he was really kind of ho hum about the whole Jamar Chase holdout last year. So I don't know. I kind of like it. Maybe it's a direct order from the top to get
mhm,
this in, but like as bad as this offseason has been for Trey Hendrickson and as wishy-washy as the Bengals and how they talk about this kind of stuff, I think it will kind of end up working out in the end. And even as of
mhm,
May 12th, Ian Rappaport said that he thinks they're going to pay him. That was 4 days ago. And that's
yeah,
within all of this stuff that's already happening. I think so many people in NFL media and insiders believe that he will be on the Bengals. And it's because of this that I think at some point Hendrickson might just kind of accept the offer. Like I think it
mhm.
might out his willingness and wantingness to stay in Cincinnati might outweigh opportunities elsewhere. But again, kind of that what I just said kind of contradicts what he just said a couple days ago.
Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, again, I think it is a little bit more personal. I also give huge kudos to
It's
Zach
become
Taylor
personal.
for putting his foot down in terms of like show up to minicamp because of what he said. I want to be a Bengal. I want to play for Cincinnati. So Zach Taylor's going, okay, you want that? You have to show up. If you want
Yeah,
to be a Bengal, prove it. Come to minicamp. Prove
totally.
you want to be here. So I give kudos to him for that. He's basically holding Hendrickson accountable for what he's saying in the media. Because if he was saying, "Oh, I don't want to be here. I don't want to. I want to get out of here," kind of like what Jermaine Pratt's doing, I don't think Zach Taylor sent Jermaine Pratt a text saying he has to come to
Not at
minicamp.
all.
That he's probably not even thinking about that. It's because he's holding Hendrickson accountable, which honestly is a really mature response from both of these parties. And in comparison to some contract disputes that we've seen in the past, I think this one has been held very maturely from both sides. And I think that that one's been held maturely. And I'm going to spin from probably the most experienced pass rusher to our brand new one in Shamar Stewart, because there's also some issues that have been flaring up over there because he did not show up to team training.
Yeah, he some issues with the contract. It was not up to the percentage or up to standard on what the 17th pick was last year, which you said was Dallas Turner.
Dallas Turner, yeah, it was Minnesota.
And he was another defensive end. So I think that's a part of Shamar Stewart's leverage there as well. And the other thing was this injury protection clause that he wants to deal with. I mean, kind of makes sense. The Bengals, I guess, have never given that out. I didn't know that to their rookies or guys that they're signing, especially in the voluntary OTAs and stuff like that. So Shamar Stewart, obviously, I mean, is he going to hold out? He doesn't really have a lot of leverage. It's not like I think it'd be kind of silly if he took this really, really far. I think it's more just like, I read something and it was basically like, if this number matches, he'll sign it. And the Bengals are lowballing the offer.
Yeah, well, I have two things that I'll say about that.
Yeah, go for it.
Like my first one, I'll put my money brain on. For the draft class, the 2025 class is making significantly less in bonuses than the year before, just because of cap space, the money across the league, NFLPA, all of that stuff. They're making a lower amount. So the fact that the bonus doesn't match is not just a Shamar Stewart issue versus Dallas Turner. Cam Ward is also making significantly less in bonuses than Caleb Williams did last year. Like, this is not just like a singular issue with the number 17 overall pick. This is an issue across the board. Don't know why it's this way. So that's where, like, I raise questions. The injury part is, I think it is, like, a valid concern. I think especially when they're basically expecting him to come in and start. I do think it's, like, kind of reasonable that he's asking for this injury protection because they're putting their bodies on the line. Like, the defensive line is one of the most dangerous positions in terms of which way your body can be construed on the football field. Like, you get put in the most uncomfortable situations trying to get around these huge linemen. Like, we saw what happened to Aiden Hutchinson last year. Like, it's a very interesting scenario. But where I'm going to answer your question of why I think he has some leverage is because of what's happening with Trey Hendrickson. Because if on the off chance that Hendrickson leaves, Shamar Stewart becomes that guy and his leverage skyrockets. Because that contract negotiation is not solid yet, Shamar Stewart has more leverage than some of these other edge rushers do on their teams because that number one spot is not certain yet.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. And it's like, you're right. If Hendrickson leaves, he could transform that into a comparable pay to what he would deserve. It would probably be a little bit more than whatever the match was for last year. I think that's fair. I mean, what are the odds that what happens first? Hendrickson signing or Shamar Stewart? Henderson extension or Shamar Stewart signs his rookie deal?
I say Shamar Stewart because he has less of a pedestal to stand on at this point. Like, because I mean, they drafted other people. They have other people in that room. The longer he stays out, like, I always think about it this way. Granted, I play soccer, not football. When you're an incoming person at any team, whether you're an incoming freshman, rookie, whatever, you are at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of respect, in terms of minutes. You have to earn it. He has other people who are working to earn that stuff right now. Technically, it's optional, but it's still seen as a positive thing if you go. The longer he holds out, the less of a chance he has and a worse impression he's going to make more likely on his teammates and on the coaching staff. So I think that happens first because he has more to prove than Hendrickson does at this point. Hendrickson's coming off a runner-up defensive player of the year season, which if he would have won it, I don't think anyone would have disagreed. But like that, he has much more to stand on than Shamar Stewart does. I wouldn't be surprised if this Shamar Stewart situation gets solved in the next couple of days.
I mean, yeah, and it said in an article that it was literally just like one number that they need to get right, and then he's gonna sign. I mean, like as of right now, the Bengals don't have any starting defensive ends because Henderson says he's not going to play, and Shamar Stewart can't play because he's not signed.
No,
but it's I think that's totally unrelated and doesn't really matter. But it was
but we'll see.
Yeah,
I'll be interested to see if it's solved by June 10th, which is like when minicamp starts. I'll be interested to
That's
see.
yeah.
Especially the
I
Henderson thing. The Shamar Stewart thing will definitely be done by then. Because that was the other big thing where Henderson is they were like, "Well, why did they reach out to him if it's still a month now?" I'm like, "Well, because they're basically putting in time it's a time bomb is what it is. They're adding a little bit more pressure to this whole
yeah,
negotiation because I feel like it's kind of been in limbo for months. So,
yeah.
I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but I don't think either of us really wants to. So,
No, I mean it's just been the same like 5 things we've
yeah.
talked about for like since the Super Bowl. But let's phase into the next season. Last week on Wednesday, the NFL released their schedule. Bengals, we knew about the opponents. We went through some mock guessing on what we thought the schedule would be. Caroline went back and listened through. We each gave what we thought a Sunday night football podcast game would be, Monday night, Thursday night. I got the Monday night game right. And I
Mhm.
was the only one that got something right out of our 6
Yeah.
guesses.
Yes.
So for those watching on the YouTube, we're going to pull up the schedule. Found this great graphic from Local 12. And like, let's just kind of go through this. I mean, not doesn't even necessarily need to be game by game. But first, my instant reaction in this is what stands out is the primetime games. Obviously, it's the first thing you're looking for when you get a new schedule. First one is this
Mhm.
at Denver, this Monday night game. The second one is this Thursday night game versus Pittsburgh. The third is, and this is my personal favorite one, is Thanksgiving night. You're done with all your Thanksgiving stuff, getting ready to do Black Friday the next day. This is the first time in in a long time since 2009. If people remember that, maybe not 2009, but the last time the Bengals played on Thanksgiving was versus the Jets in when it was Mark Sanchez and those guys, and the Bengals got handled. And I remember watching this when I was like 7, and here I am now graduating college at 22. But that's nonetheless. And then they wrap it up with this other confirmed Sunday night game versus Miami. Obviously, these Sunday night games are kind of subject to change with these new flex rules. But like Caroline, what kind of jumps out to you on this schedule? I think it's pretty well balanced, I'd say, with kind of how stuff's laid out. But I'm really excited. I think it's just a pretty solid group of games the Bengals have.
Yeah, I think it's really well balanced. I'm really interested to see how they navigate Lions and Packers in back-to-back weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that'll be a sneaky part on the schedule that if they have a characteristic Bengals slump, that's going to eat them alive
Yeah.
because you have a Lions recovering defense who, when they're healthy, is top three. And then you have a Packers team that I think the Packers are extremely well coached, and I think it's why they're as good as they are. They don't have a bunch of names that jump out at you on a sheet of things of why they're so good. I just think that that coaching staff up in Green Bay is phenomenal, and it makes them what they are. And they usually struggle for the first 4 weeks, which would get them to that Detroit game, and if they don't have their ducks in a line, Detroit especially is gonna rip them apart.
Yeah. It's so by I agree. I think that's why we've put a lot of emphasis on the OTAs, especially talking last week about how this is the foundation for the Super Bowl window and getting
Mhm.
ready to roll. Part I'm interested in is the bye week is obviously after this Chicago game,
Yeah.
and then the Bengals get this Thursday night game versus Baltimore, and then it kind of operates as a mini bye as well, with 10 days off after Thanksgiving before they go at Buffalo, which is probably the marquee matchup the Bengals have on their schedule this year.
Mhm. I think so. It's really interesting to me that they don't see even Baltimore until the back, like, end of the year
Yeah.
because especially for the AFC. I mean, obviously, the NFC, the Lions and the Packers are both playoff caliber teams, and the Vikings as well in week 3, but I still think the Vikings might not be at their peak yet come week 3 because they have a rookie quarterback, and I don't know if JJ McCarthy will be fully at peak functioning by then. But when they swing around to the Ravens, that's really like a top AFC test. And that's really the first experience that they will have. Because then at the back end of the season, they have Baltimore, Buffalo, Baltimore back to back
Hmm.
to back. And then you take a Miami team who, given all the off the field issues they have, most of the time on the field, they're a playoff contending team. Like it'll be interesting. The back end of that schedule is really interesting to me. I
It's
was really
tough.
surprised that I know they have a primetime game the week before, but honestly, given the hype around the Burrow Allen stuff, Was
I'm
really
shocked.
surprised that that Sunday game was a 4:25 and not an 8. So I took the courtesy of looking up what game took the primetime slot on the 7th. Chiefs Texans. I was
All right.
surprised
I
there.
don't know. I mean, yeah.
I was surprised. I'm not surprised about the Chiefs, but I would have
Yeah.
at least expected them to have, because it's not like the Texans have came off a good year.
No. I
CJ
mean, they made the
Stroud had a
playoffs.
sophomore slump,
Yeah.
and it'll be interesting, that's for sure. That one just caught my eye because I
I
thought that one for sure was gonna be a primetime game.
I think I was more confused because there was some leaks that the opening Sunday night game was going to be Bengals versus Bills. Like week 1, I read an article and it was that the people thought it was going to be that Eagles opening up on Thursday and then that full Sunday of football, and it was going to be Bengals Bills at in Buffalo to start the season. I really don't mind that not happening, to be quite honest. I love starting with the Browns, and I
Yeah.
think the Browns sandwich is kind of funny too, because this has happened the last couple of years where they end the season with Cleveland or begin the season with them, or a couple times it's been the same kind of ordeal where they've started and ended the season with them. The Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people were frustrated, and this is a fair criticism. I think a lot of people thought the Bengals get kind of gypped of primetime home games, and that's kind of what I've
Mhm.
been reading too. Bengals have a great stadium environment, and you see it on these nighttime games that they've had the last couple of years. The one primetime home game is this Pittsburgh Thursday night game. Yeah, that'll be electric. But what people are frustrated about is that this is the 4th year in a row that the Bengals have had a 1 o'clock home game versus the Ravens, and then have gone on the road for a primetime, all the lights on them, nighttime game versus the Ravens. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, Caroline.
No, it's a really odd coincidence, but, like, again, I'm not gonna take the time to get into the heads of
Yeah,
the NFL schedulers, but I do think it's weird. I mean, it would be really weird if they didn't have I don't even wanna count the Prime Video game. Like, I know it's still a prime time game, but it's
yeah,
Amazon Prime Video. No
yeah.
offense to Amazon, like, I'm not gonna whatever, but I think everybody knows that Thursday night is, like, the least significant, I guess, of the primetime games.
Quote unquote, yeah.
Yeah, but also to your point, that week 1 primetime game is still the Bills, but they're playing the Ravens.
I do, and I think I saw that. That was my first reaction too. Is I mean, I think that's might have been why there was some thought that the Bills were always going to
Yeah.
open up with some high
I'm not
level opponent.
surprised given the MVP debacle of last year that that's
Yeah,
the primetime game they open up with.
yeah. I so now the Bengals have really transformed their fan experience over the last like 6 years with these like different themed nights, like the white
Mhm.
out and the orange out. And it kinda just, like, flew into the schedule naturally, like, the Ring of Honor ceremony and stuff like that's always been on a Thursday night, 3 years that they've done it, and those are all early season. It doesn't really, like I don't know, it kinda feels like the Bengals primetime games are really backloaded as well. I mean, well, they got this
Mhm.
Denver one early in the season, but that's on the road. So, I don't know. I mean, it's exciting. I think that they play a lot of good teams that were bad last year that are gonna be better. New
Yeah,
England and
I agree.
Chicago stand out. And even I don't know, I'm excited to see how they play against Jacksonville. First home
Mhm.
game. Is Trevor Lawrence going to take this next leap? We get to see Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
I think
Is the
they
Liam
might.
Cohen offense as good as they're claiming it's going to be?
Yeah, literally. I mean, and as a UK fan, I mean, he was something the first go around. Then the second time it was abysmal.
Yeah,
But
well, he was good for was it Tampa before?
yeah, he's
He
a
was
bit
good
all over
there.
the place.
He
Yeah.
transformed Baker Mayfield, I'll give him that.
Yeah, I will say he's been great. I really like Bengals have a nice 3-game homestand too in this
Mhm.
October range, and then they end the season with 2 home games in a row too. So
Yeah, it'll be
3 home
interesting to
games,
see
yeah.
when those, that Arizona and Cleveland game fall, because 'cause it'll probably just depend on where they are. I think it's
If they're
interesting that
good.
they're opening and closing the season against Cleveland. I think that's interesting.
They did that a couple years ago where they started versus Cleveland and then they ended versus Cleveland. And last year they ended versus Cleveland and they played Cleveland in like week 3. So it was Interesting. And you can kind of like, I mean, is Arizona going to be good? So like, you can't really guess. You can't really
No,
pinpoint like what this game
because
is going to go.
Arizona's just there. We talked about it
Yeah,
last week. They're kinda just like
yeah. Like when the schedule came out last year and they had Denver on that Saturday/Sunday game, like we knew Denver was going to be like competent, and you could kind of guess which way it was going to swing, and then it ended up being that primetime game. But it's like, I don't know. I I don't really like the Saturday games. I mean, that's kind of an odd thing to have a take on, but what's your take on that?
well, I think it's interesting. I mean, it kind of like it almost like stimulates the playoffs a little bit because there's a lot of
Mhm,
playoffs games on Saturday. But I also think, especially when you get into those last 2 weeks of the season, when you have like, especially in the AFC, because the NFC is usually decided way farther in advance, other than that
mhm.
like 7 seed, because just as of recently, the AFC has been a lot more competitive. It gives you the opportunity to have more primetime games, and I think that that's probably the main reasoning
Yeah,
behind it, is it
I guess
gives
you're right.
more teams the opportunity to have those prime time slots, especially on Saturdays. Like, people are like, "Oh, you're playing on Saturday," but I'm like, "Yeah, there's usually a 4:25 game and a 8:20 game on
Mhm.
or a 7:20 game on Saturday, which all the other games still play on Sunday, so technically you're getting more eyes because you see more and more people watching those Saturday games than you have in years past, but it'll be interesting. I was a little sad
Yeah.
to see the Bengals not have a, international game, though. I think
Yeah, I
they're
know. There was some scuttlebutt that was gonna happen. I mean, for the last 3 years, we've been saying, like, Thanksgiving, Christmas, international game. Like, they haven't been to I'm just shocked that they haven't leveraged this, like I mean, we talked last week how Burrow's a megastar. How sick would it be to throw him in London or
or
in
even in
Madrid?
Germany.
Well, that's what people want. The Bengals fans want the Germany game because of the German roots in Cincinnati. It would be like a mass exodus from Cincinnati to Berlin or wherever they're Munich or whatever it is, and people would use it as an excuse to go visit where like their roots are from. And I don't understand
Mhm,
why it's a literally a match made in heaven with the Bengals and you know what? Maybe there's like some behind the scenes stuff that we just don't even know, but it just makes too much sense for the Bengals to be playing a game in Germany and it just hasn't happened yet.
mhm.
Who knows? I don't know.
I saw something somewhere that apparently they were gonna host an international game starting in the '27 season,
I saw
was
that too.
what I saw
Yeah.
somewhere, but I don't know, I mean, I feel like we talked about this before. It's not an easy schedule, like, it's
No.
not. Like, if the Bengals definitely in terms of if you just look on last season, because that's really all that we can look at right now, and the draft picks that some of these teams made, the Bengals are looking at a harder schedule. Let me
Mhm.
actually, like, see because I know there's usually a ranking somewhere, but I would not be surprised if they're up there for one of the hardest schedules.
They do travel the least. I saw that. They're going to travel the least amount of
Yeah,
miles this season out of any team.
that actually surprises me. It says that the Bengals are pretty much dead center for strength of schedule.
That's kind
Has
of
them
what I would
7
think.
it
Yeah.
has them 17th.
Yeah. I mean, they were average last year and they're playing a bunch of average teams that
Yeah,
they like matched up with that they on their schedules. I think a lot of this we're basing this on Chicago maybe being a lot better than last year and New England being a lot better than last year. And like
yeah.
honestly, who really knows about New England especially because I mean, yeah,
It's
I
a
think
toss-up.
Chicago, yeah. I mean, Vrabel's great, but like I think Chicago is going to be infinitely better than they were last year. But I think we're putting a lot of weight on them on assuming that both them
Yeah,
and even like the putting this back up just so I can look at it, we're putting a lot of weight on Miami being better than they were last year, the Patriots being better than they were last year, the Bears being better than they were last year, and honestly, the Bengals being better than they were last year.
yeah.
That's the main assumption that
That's
we
the
have on
big
all of
one.
this. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because it was like we are under we're this conversation we're having is all based on the fact that we think the Bengals can probably be a top 4 team in the NFL. So it's
yeah,
like, yeah, we're also looking at this with a little bit of bias as well,
yeah.
especially me. But it's, I think it's interesting.
Who do you think has the hardest strength of schedule? Because I have the graphic pulled up on my computer. Who do you think has the hardest? I'd say the first 2
mm,
teams are not surprising, but then the other 3 teams that make up the top 5 are actually
I mean, did the
really
Eagles have a tough?
surprising.
Did the Eagles have a tough one?
Eagles are 4th.
Okay.
3
So
of the
therefore,
other top 5 are on the Bengals schedule.
okay, I want to take a guess.
Okay.
3 of the other top 5, I'm going to guess Pittsburgh.
Nope.
I think that's a good guess, though.
It's a good guess, but they're
What
not
about
top 5.
what about like I'm gonna guess just like 3 teams and see if it sticks.
Okay.
Detroit, New England, and Buffalo.
You got 1.
Which one did I get?
De
Was it Detroit?
Detroit.
Yeah.
So top 5 are the New York Giants, which again, not surprising.
They have the hardest one.
2nd Yep. 2nd
Interesting. Oh, because their
is
division's so good.
yeah, and then Cleveland is 2nd also because the AFC North is
Hmm.
quite good. Got Detroit, Philly, Minnesota. That's the top 5.
Interesting. I don't know. I
So,
mean, I
we'll
guess it
see.
kind of makes sense that the Bengals are kind of right in the middle.
Yeah, the
But
graph is really interesting because a lot of teams are really close. The one that
mhm.
surprised me is San Francisco is, like, way above everyone else for having the easiest
who
schedule.
who has the easiest? Oh, you said what did you say? You said it was San
It
Francisco?
was San Fran, New England, New Orleans are the top 3, and they're, like, way above
New
everybody else.
England. Is that again, I
I
think
don't
that's a lot
know
of basing on
that
people
they're gonna
think the
be
Patriots
better.
are gonna be good.
That's why I'm surprised San Francisco's up there because everyone thinks San Francisco's gonna be bad.
And well, I think San Francisco's getting some help that I don't think their division's gonna be that good.
Oh gosh, the NFC
And
West has been average for a
yeah,
while.
and and we were talking about this and you didn't believe me, as I think the Panthers might win 7 games. And I
The
and this
Saints are a
and
mess, though.
well, and this is why I think they can be good, is that they have far and away the worst division in the NFL.
Mhm.
I liked what I saw, especially towards the back half of the year with Bryce Young, and I think you got a really great receiver, and then you got. I just think you're going to be better than you were last year, at least. I really like. I don't remember what their win total is because I think I saw it at like 6.5 or 5.5, and I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
kind of want to get on this before the Bengals one's already gone up. It was at 7.5 before the schedule release, and it's up to 8.5.
I was
So
gonna
and
say,
it's
as like a kind of a closer, we could do what do we think record's gonna look like? Early predictions, obviously. We can do another one, like, right
okay.
before the season
We'll
actually
pull it back
starts.
up. This is my first glance, no research, off the
Yeah, no
dome.
research, just spitball.
Win versus Cleveland, win versus Jacksonville, start off 2-0. 2
Mhm,
losses in these next 2 games.
mhm.
I'm going to say another loss to Detroit. That's 3 losses in a row. Win versus Green Bay, and then they'll win versus Pittsburgh, win versus the Jets, win versus Chicago. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. God, they already have 6 wins in this mock one that I've done. They'll lose this Pittsburgh game. They'll win this New England game. They'll lose both of these Baltimore and Buffalo games. And then I think they could win out. Is that like 10 or
Yeah.
11 wins? I didn't really keep track.
I was
1,
gonna say, that's
2,
what it
3,
sounds like.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I think that's
Yeah.
about right. I think they
Okay.
smashed the over on whatever they're
I
because it's
do
going to be
too.
around 8.5. They're going to win
Okay,
10 games at least.
I'm gonna do mine.
Okay.
I agree with you where I think it's win-win for weeks 1 and 2. I say they lose to Minnesota. I say they beat Denver, but then I think they lose to Detroit and Green Bay.
Okay.
I'm gonna say they beat Pittsburgh prime time. They beat
You
the
have
Jets.
to win that game.
Yes. They beat Chicago. I agree with you. I think they're gonna split with the Steelers because the Steelers always find a way. I think they
Mhm.
lose the 1 o'clock game against the Steelers. I think they beat New England, but I think that game will I have faith in New England. I think that game's gonna be closer than a lot of people think it is.
Mhm.
I think as much as it pains me to put this, I think they're gonna lose to Baltimore on Thanksgiving at home.
Yeah,
I think it's
they're
gonna be
not
a
going to
really
win that
hard
game.
game for them to win. I'm gonna say they win Buffalo.
Okay.
I'm gonna say they I'm gonna make a bold prediction. I hope I'm wrong. I'm gonna have them not beating Baltimore at all next year.
Interesting.
I just think the way Baltimore's set up doesn't pair well with the way our defense
Not
is
at
currently
all.
structured. I say they beat Miami. I say they beat Arizona, and I am going to, again, take another gamble here, and I'm gonna say they lose weeks 18 to the Browns because 'cause they're resting for the playoffs.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Mine puts them at 10 and 7 wild card spot. That's where mine is.
I just don't. I mean, we'll see. We've talked about the freaking schedule for 20 minutes now, but I think the what the Bengals have never had with Joe Burrow is they've always had. I mean, they won the division and they rested him in a Cleveland game a couple years ago. But it'd be an awesome world if they were playing this Arizona game for like a 1 or a 2 seed and didn't have to play anyone in this Cleveland game. It'd be so great if they could have something wrapped up by like this Miami game.
Yeah.
Like maybe this Miami game is for like a playoff berth / division or something like that.
Probably a
It would
playoff
just
berth,
be
most
so
likely.
frustrating if they get to this Sunday game and Joe Burrow has to play.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, I mean, that'd be unreal. But
yeah,
I don't know. I think we said we like the schedule. I like the primetime games. I wish there was another one at home.
Yeah.
Oh, well. One more thing,
It's
going to
okay.
be quick. This is really like, it was a quick article I read. Bengals are trying to get the draft to be in Cincinnati in 2028 or
Saw that.
2029. I think it'd be sweet, and they're renovating the stuff downtown. I think it'd be really awesome.
I think it would be a cool place for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, maybe we'll get some more info on that. It was literally
Yeah.
just like a blurb that I read on
Yeah, I was gonna
Pro
say I
Football
saw
Talk.
something about that. It was like a tweet. That was like one
Yeah,
sentence.
same.
And then
And I
I
was
was
like, I
like,
clicked
oh,
on it and I was like,
interesting.
yeah,
Next one.
yeah. Well, it was. I wish there was like more. It was literally just like Bengals trying for draft. There was like
Yeah.
nothing like of substance underneath it.
No.
So
But
I don't know. All right,
yeah.
good talk, Caroline. I
Yeah.
will talk to you next week. And as always,
Yeah.
folks, thanks for tuning in to Welcome to the Jungle, Cincinnati Bengals podcast. We'll be back with more updates as they come. Thanks for tuning in, and Hoo Day.